Hi, you are welcome to Law and Society with Teresa Mary. Our topic number 4 is loving within the law. The arithmetic of marriage is said to be 1 + 1 = 1. It is generally believed that upon marriage, two persons of the opposite sex become welded into one flesh. Many a marriage counselor will tell couples to keep this fact ever in mind if they wished their marriage to succeed. The bottom line is that trust is the bedrock of every successful marriage. However, virtue lies in the middle. That is to say that too much of anything is bad. What those sayings go to prove is that it is possible to trust too much. Love your spouse by all means, but do so with your eyes wide open. There is nothing wrong with couples having joint bank accounts, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with them owning properties together. What is wrong is when they sacrifice the future of their children on the altar of blind love. Mr. K was an international business tycoon, while Mrs. K was a full-time housewife living in the state capital with the 3 young children their marriage was blessed with. While away in China, Mr. K sent money into his wife's account to purchase a house for the family in Fortune City. The lady bought the property in her name. Because Mr. K was not on ground in quotes, a host of other properties bought with money he paid into her account were purchased in Mrs. K's name. Why not? Mr. K was in love with his wife and did not see anything wrong with the documents of his properties being in her name. All sweet things are liable to go sour at one point or the other. Love is no exception. When Mr. K quit his line of business and returned home to his family, he started having some petty misunderstandings with his wife. It was nothing more than the normal husband and wife squabbles, but Mrs. K appeared to have some ulterior motives for her constant bickering. After a quarrel one evening when her husband was away, she picked all the documents of his properties and eloped with her boyfriend, leaving the children behind. A couple of weeks later, her lawyer served Mr. K a divorce petition, together with a 7-day notice of owner's intention to recover possession of the family house purchased in Mrs. K's name. You may say that is outrageous, and you will be correct. It is Mr. Tortoise in a certain folk tale who says that it is because of men's propensity to claim what belongs to others that he has decided to be carrying his own house with him wherever he goes. Lucky Tortoise. Human beings are not the same. You see, for failing to insist that the properties bought with his money should be duly conveyed in his name, Mr. K eventually found himself in a losing legal tussle with his one-time heartthrob and her new lover. Another case in point was that of Dr. Mrs. Z, the owner of the famous ABYZ Hospital and Maternity. Her husband, Mr. Z, was a small-time politician who had won the councillorship seat of their local government council twice. Dr. Mrs. Z had never allowed the disparity in status between her and her husband to get into her head, but her in-laws will never cease accusing her of secretly lording it over their son and brother. Anxious not to justify their speculations, she allowed Mr. Z to buy all the family properties in his sole name. She gave him money to buy 2 plots of land in the core area of Fortune City and had them developed entirely in his name. The 4 cars belonging to the family were bought in Mr. Z's name, even though it was Dr. Mrs. Z who paid over 80% of their purchase price. Even the documents of the land on which she built her hospital, as well as the hospital complex itself, were in Mr. Z's name. Look, I love my husband. I trust him implicitly, Dr. Mrs. Z once told her best friend, MS.B, who was a lawyer and who had expressed shock that the doctor should be so trusting. My husband and I are like 5 and 6. He is the father of my 4 children. So why should I not trust him? I'm a Christian, and the Bible says that a man will leave his father and his mother and become one flesh with his wife. There is absolutely nothing wrong with a Christian woman purchasing properties in her husband's name. Okay, now you think it's because I'm yet to be married that I'm seeing this whole matter in a different light, said MS.B to her doctor friend. But in my candid opinion, my sister, this does not have anything to do with being a Christian woman. You are an educated woman, Doc, a well-educated woman. I'm afraid you are just carrying on like one who is not exposed at all to the kind of wicked world that we live in. Mind you, I'm not saying you should not love your husband though. All I'm saying is that you should love with your eyes wide open. Love within the law. If you wish to buy properties for your hobby, as a loving and submissive wife that you are, then for God's sake, let them at least be in your joint names. Let your receipts and deeds of conveyance bear the 2 names of Mr. Ken Z and Dr. Mrs. Liz Z under the column of purchasers. That, my dear, is to love within the law. At that, Dr. Mrs. Z burst out laughing and gave her friend a mock applause, telling her, so even loving is regulated by the law? Be my friend. You lawyers now, wow for now. Anyways, there's no law that you can quote for me, my dear, that will make me see this matter differently from the way the good Lord has designed it to be. My love for my husband is the agape love and not the type that is regulated by any man-made laws. Imagine loving within the law. You lawyers no go keep personal. And that was how Dr. Mrs. Z waved off her lawyer friend's advice. About 12 years later, she lost her husband to COVID-19. After his burial, the family called a meeting at which they introduced Junior to Dr. Mrs. Z. Junior was a young man in his mid-20s and was a spitting image of the deceased Mr. Z. Junior was introduced to Dr. Mrs. Z as late Mr. Z's first son. Our brother had Junior the year he graduated from the university, long before he was ready for marriage. He didn't let you know about Junior's existence all these years because you are such an iron lady, one of her sisters-in-law told Dr. Mrs. Z gleefully. That was a bombshell for Dr. Mrs. Z, but the real tornado hit the good doctor when her deceased husband's family seized the title deeds of their landed properties as well as the particulars of their cars, insisting that by their native law and custom, a man's first son was entitled to claim all of his late father's properties. What? Dr. Mrs. Z raved in anger, swearing that she was the actual owner of all those properties bearing her late husband's name. But the people refused to believe her, for documents do not lie. Yes, documents do not lie. Sadly, that was also the opinion of the court at the end of the bitter legal battle that followed. The court held that the oral testimony could never dislodge documentary evidence, for that is the legal maxim, res ipsa loquitur. The thing speaks for itself. Years later, it was with tears of regret that Dr. Mrs. Z always remembered her friend's warning to love within the law. Thank you very much for listening. This is Law and Society with Theresa Mary. Goodbye.